It is Friday, March 5th, 2021. It is 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so you know what time it is. It's time for a little bit of coin metal. And it was yet another non-virtual Get Your Ass Kicked at Jiu-Jitsu Friday. Although, unfortunately, I still got fucking ringworm. So, I'm on the sidelines, rolling on my own mat, sweaty, feeling freaky, feeling monstrous, just got off the mat. So, yeah. Anywho, yeah, I'm sick. So, I can't go and give my training partners the sick, even though one of those fuckers gave it to me. I mean, because really, I don't have a social life other than jiu-jitsu. And really, it's like, if you talk to a lot of people and a lot of people talk to you during the day, like if you're a salesperson or something, like if you get sick, most of the time it's respiratory because you're breathing on people, and when they reply, they're breathing on you. However, if your primary stock and trade is wrestling with people, and that's usually the social context in which you're engaging others in, your sicks, your little colds, they tend to be skin related. So yeah, not really happy about that. It's really a matter of cleanliness. If you're not washing your fucking hands, and you wipe your ass and maybe get a little shit on your fingers, and then you go roll with people and you smear that all over the fucking place. That's the kind of thing that causes people to get ringworm, asshole. So yeah, not really happy about it, but I will say this. I've had ringworm and I've had staph, and there's some effects of these parasitic kind of things, or not. I don't know. Ringworm is bacterial, so I don't know if you would consider it to be kind of parasitic in that sense. Anyway, their tolls are a myriad. They don't just affect your skin, right? They affect your brain. They affect your energy level because your immune system is busy fighting it and shit. And so it's like, it's only when you're really coming out of it that you realize, dude, I've been I've been having this weird trip for the last week or so while this thing has gotten the better of my fucking immune system, and it expresses in a lot of weird ways, and one of them is just cognitive issues. You feel more sluggish, kind of depressed, you feel like, oh fuck, this is my fault. No, it's not really my fault. It's the fucking asshole that drug it to the fucking mat. I shower right after, and as a matter of fact, as soon as we get into our music break, that's exactly where I'm headed, despite the fact I'm the only one that rolls on that mat. I'm not going to take the chance that I picked up something on my feet, put it all over the fucking mat, and then rolled all over it, and now it's stewing in my sweat, and I'm stewing in it, and I'm going to fucking get it even worse. So, I mean, that's just the level of precaution I take, I'm the one that wears my fucking mouthpiece while I'm on the treadmill. I mean, you would not believe what a conditioner that is of your breath. If you wear a fucking mouthpiece while you're doing cardio, it will condition your breathing. You'll be more conscientious of it. You'll be able to maintain control of it more, because you notice it more. It's harder to breathe through that fucking thing than without it. And so when you're doing mouth breaths, they're even harder. Because most of your breathing you got to end up doing through your nose because you got this big old piece of plastic in between your teeth, But anyway, that's one thing that my first competitive loss really taught me. I mean, it taught me that I wasn't really prepared for what I was doing. It taught me that steroid use does exist in even the most amateur of amateur leagues in Brazilian wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and no-gi jiu-jitsu. Steroid use is there, even if it is TRT or fucking HGH or whatever the fuck they're using. Point being is, people are using PEDs in amateur of amateur sport levels. So, I mean, it gives you an idea of how competitive it is out there. Anyway, I was completely ill-prepared for that. And I'll never forget that experience either, because I saw the guy before I was paired up with him, and my first thought was, I feel sorry for whoever who has to go against that guy. Because, like, 250 pounds, he's fucking 5'8", he's fucking huge, and he's muscular. It's not fat weight he's carrying around. That's muscle. I can see it right here in the locker room with no shirt on. The dude's huge, fucking jacked. Anyway, so, I mean, I've been working out all my life, you know? I've been working at gyms, I've been personal trainer, all that shit. And I can tell you, this man is not a natural phenom, okay? He hires professionals to give him privates. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is probably the only martial art he doesn't have higher than a white belt in. and the white belt that he wore is probably not the one from his gym, because it was pure white and there wasn't a stripe on it. But that man, he had the takedown skills of somebody who'd had several years in judo. Not just one or two, several. And the majority of that stock was spent with private tutors, I could tell. Anyway, so this guy is fucking gargantuan. Even though he's older than me, he's fucking just really in good shape. I'm honestly speaking, at least partially from jealousy here, because when I'm that old, I want to look that good. Anyway, so like when I got paired up with this guy, I was kind of flabbergasted, really, because I made effort to make weight. You know, if I'd have, you know, just like said, fuck it, you know, I'll go in at 212 or whatever the fuck I was, and if they can pair me up with somebody, great. If not, I'm going to eat the 100 and change that was the entry fee. So I didn't do that, though. You know, being a sportsman, I tried to make weight on site, and I ended up coming in a pound under. But I ran for like an hour on the second level of this fucking auditorium, trying to make weight. And then on top of that, as soon as I was done running, I was getting ready to weigh myself. Right then I had to go to the bathroom. So I go to the bathroom, and that's when I see this guy, right? And then I come back out, they weigh me, I'm at like 207, I'm supposed to be at 208. And so I'm in, great, yeah, I can roll. And the guy tells me right after that, he's like, well, we don't have anybody else in your age and weight category for white belts, so but we do have this other guy. He's a little bit older, and he's a little bit heavier. Would that be okay? And I'm like, yeah, I guess. I mean, shit, I drove 200 fucking miles to do this competition, so sure, pair me up with him. And wouldn't you fucking know it, it's the gray gorilla that I saw in the fucking locker room. and like I said, I mean, he was kind. I'll be honest with you here. He could have been way rougher with me. I could tell by his grip that his instructors were way rougher with him. Okay? This guy, you know, like I said, spent a lot of time in a dojo. It's obvious to me. Anyway, he just sweeps me, fucking puts me on the ground like I'm just like a wet towel or something, and immediately assumes a dominant position. And I'm still trying to remember to do my fucking frames and shit. And this guy's just like 8 steps ahead of me and just ruling the world. And part of my fucking problem was that was the only time that I'd worn a mouthpiece in all of my training. I didn't even wear a mouthpiece when I ran to make weight. If I'd have done that alone, my lungs would have already been conditioned, my breathing would have already been conditioned just a little bit to having to compensate for wearing this motherfucking thing in my mouth. But no, that's not the way it happened. Anyway, but it taught me, though, that really makes a difference when it comes to your rolling. And I've come to kind of rely on it nowadays. Like, when I've got that thing in my mouth and I'm breathing really hard, I remember clench down on it, hold the breath for a moment, try and lower the heart rate. Is this a position that I can just spend a moment to relax in, try and get that heart rate down by 1 this minute? I probably can. And so that, you know, that's really the way I use that thing. It's really good for you. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw into music, because I need to get a shower. And as far as where we're going to go with that, I would like to play some Steel Panther, but I've been denying my body count. And besides, man, I'm really feeling it. I'm still kind of jacked up from being on the mat. So here it is. Carnivore. First Dance. Here on Coin Metal. And that was Pantera with Rise. No, that doesn't work. You know, I wanted to try DJing with the mouthpiece, and unfortunately it doesn't work. I already knew that you can't talk, but you know, I had to joke with you guys. Anyway, as far as what we're going to get into today, man, you know, a lot's happened over the time that I've been hosting this show, and this one was perhaps to this day, other than maybe talking to Verge Dev about cryptocurrencies back in the day on the show, maybe other than that, this is probably the most important interview and fun interview that I've ever done. And it's John McAfee. Now, some people confuse the association between McAfee and Verge currency. Let me make this perfectly clear. I am the connection between John McAfee and Verge. And now let me explain that. I had been doing this show for, I think, at least a year. Maybe a year. I don't know. And I think I might have, it might have been after my hiatus. There was a brief period in which I was not actually hosting the show. Channel was still up. I said, fuck it. I'm going to go back to doing the show. Here I am. So anyway, it was shortly thereafter, I'm pretty sure, that I decided, well, you know, I really like John McAfee. And I've always really liked John McAfee. To me, he's represented both a pioneer and a shyster of epic orders. And this is not his defense, by the way. It's not to defend Mr. McAfee. His mouth gets him in enough trouble as is. But, so anyway, I liked John McAfee from the beginning, from the 80s, and just watching him throughout his time and whatnot. And I became like re-intrigued with him when I saw him on Joe Rogan's show. And so after that, I decided that, you know, I'd really like to have, if McAfee gets into crypto, I want to have him on the show. And so lo and behold, I read this article, and it was him describing his back alley purchase of Bitcoin. And so I'm like, okay, this is it. This is the flag that says, try to contact McAfee and see if you can get him on the show. And so that's exactly what I did. I got a hold of McAfee. I got some additional contact information from him for contacting him for the show, and it went from there. And the interview was fabulous. It was probably the longest interview that anybody has actually done with him. I got more out of the man than I think the person that did the fucking documentary on him did. And so anyway, it wasn't a spectacularly like controversial interview at all. It was insightful and it was interesting. But you know, if you really listen to the man, I still haven't gotten my stealth phone yet. But if you listen to that interview, it is mentioned. But if you really listen to him and you've spent any duration of time in crypto, and I mean like months, after a couple months you figure this kind of shit out, or at least I did, that you have to pay attention to people's vocabulary. It is very, very important. If they're saying things like has the potential to, might do, probably will, you know, these are like, they're trying to create some fucking fudge factor room here in the conversation, or at least between what is being discussed and what actually happens. or what is actually intended to happen. And so, again, you need to pay attention to people's vocabulary that they use. Okay, because they tell you everything in what they don't tell you in the omissions that they use with their fucking vocabulary. And you know, using vocabulary to communicate with people is at least partially trying to communicate exact elements of a conversation. You know, like you're trying to convey actual elements of real information. Now, however, you may characterize that information in different ways depending on your intent and to the audience that is receiving it. You can tailor it to where you create a specific impression without providing a description that you could be held to in court. Okay? And so, like I said, if you really listen to shit, you can hear a lot more going on there, a lot more going on in the background, a lot that is being omitted and is specifically being denied, not mentioned for very specific reasons, mostly because you'd probably object to it if you knew the full extent of what was going on. And they just don't want you to object to it. You know, it's like you don't want to tell your dad that you didn't actually get your homework done. I mean, these things, you don't want to do it. But it eventually happens that the report card comes home, you didn't turn in your homework, you got a bad grade, dad finds out. It's going to happen anyway. So yeah, Mr. McAfee. So apparently shit has caught up with him. And when I say shit, I mean just what I've been mentioning here. That Mr. McAfee says stuff, and he has incredible oratory skill, and he is very lawyerly in the way he uses his vocabulary. Although he does overstep occasionally, just to create a little bit of sizzle. But that's what he does it for. And I mean, I'm not going to give away the whole guy's trip here, but you have to pay attention to what the man says. If you don't, it's not his responsibility to interpret it for you. So anyway, got this thing here. It's on Coindesk.com. John McAfee indicted by DOJ on money laundering fraud charges for boosting ICOs. This is by Nicholas D. And it was authored on March 5th, 2021 at 9:05 a.m. PST. But yes, penis. Tech entrepreneur John McAfee has been indicted by the U.S. Department of Justice on fraud and money laundering charges tied to McAfee's touting of various cryptocurrency projects without disclosing he was paid to do so. Oh, and by the way, I never paid McAfee a fucking dime to be on my show. Not one single fucking Satoshi, not a Verge, not a Dogecoin Dark, not a nothing. The motherfucker came on my show gratis. On him. Anyway, continuing. Pro bono. McAfee, who is currently detained in Spain on a separate tax charge by the DOJ, was indicted alongside Jimmy Watson Jr., an executive advisor to McAfee, according to a press release on Friday. They allegedly made more than $13 million from investors. An attached complaint said McAfee is being charged with several counts of wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering. Yeah, all that shit's going to fail. According to the court documents, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, is bringing separate charges and filing for injunctive relief and civil penalties. Well, the best that can be said of this situation is that Mr. McAfee, if in fact transferred from Spain, as per this extradition, I'm sure that there's some sort of extradition going to be associated with all this, that he will be in a prison with a better healthcare facility. Oh, man. And so, I got one more on the public front of things, and then we'll get into the actual court thing. And this one's on lawandcrime.com. Antivirus software trailblazer John McAfee accused of $13 million scalping fraud and money laundering scheme. And this is by Adam Klasfeld. And it was authored March 5th, 2021 at 12:05 p.m. Antivirus engineer mogul John McAfee, who has been awaiting extradition from Spain on tax evasion charges since late last year, just had his legal woes compounded by federal prosecutors in Manhattan on Friday morning. The 75-year-old computer programmer now also stands accused of a $13 million fraud and money laundering scheme. Prosecutors claim that McAfee and Jimmy Gale Watson Jr., an executive advisor of his cryptocurrency team, engaged in a, quote, pump and dump scheme known as scalping, where they bought large quantities of publicly traded cryptocurrency altcoins at cheap rates to be peddled on social media. As alleged, McAfee and Watson exploited a widely used social media platform and enthusiasm among investors on the emerging cryptocurrency market to make millions through lies and deception. Manhattan U.S. Attorney Audrey Strauss wrote in a statement, quote, "The defendants allegedly used McAfee's Twitter account to publish messages to hundreds of thousands of his Twitter followers, touting various cryptocurrencies through false and misleading statements to conceal their true self-interested motives." Dude, everything in finance is self-motivated. Get it through your fucking head. McAfee, Watson, and other members of McAfee's cryptocurrency team allegedly raked in more than $13 million from investors they victimized with their fraudulent schemes. Investors should be wary of social media endorsements of investment opportunities. Yes, you should. McAfee now has more than 1 million followers on his verified Twitter account, which he promoted his altcoins and messages embedded in his criminal complaint. Quote, and this is a John McAfee tweet, "Beginning tomorrow, I will each day talk about a unique altcoin. Most of the 2,000 coins are trash or scams. I've read every white paper. The few I'm connected to, I will tell you. The rest I have no position in. These coins will change the world. You can support that change." Yeah, there's no specific claim of you're going to increase in value. Fuck you, SEC. Howie Test lost. McAfee tweeted those altcoin endorsements on his verified account without disclosing that he owned large quantities of them, even though he falsely promised transparency, prosecutors claim. Together with other members of his team, McAfee allegedly sold his investment position in that significant short-term price increase that his tweets generated, but the long-term value of the altcoin usually declined significantly in the year following. What? In the year? Fuck you! Go on any motherfucking exchange and you'll see that same decline over the same motherfucking year. Give me a fucking break. You know what? If you hold your fucking bag too long, you get wrecked. I don't give a fuck if we're talking about Bitcoin. I don't give a fuck if we're talking about Ethereum. I don't give a fuck if we're talking about Federal Reserve notes. You hold the bag too long, you take it in the ass. That's this fucking equation, man. It's fucking economics. Anyway, continuing. Prosecutors say that the first time McAfee successfully carried out this scheme happened in mid-December 2017 with an altcoin named Verge. Bullshit. Look, if McAfee fucking bought a bunch of Verge and then sold it privately OTC, that's his gig. But talking this shit like there was some association that, we pumped fucking fuck you. Look at the fucking chart, man. If you can do TA, that is a cycle. His being on my show coincided with the fucking uptrend. And loosely at that, I'm pretty sure fucking Verge actually spiked before we had him on the show. So, again, if you want to try to associate it with that double bounce, look previous on the chart. You see the double bounce on there too. Fuck you people. You held your fucking bag too long and you were intending solely to hold it as an investment. What do you do with an investment when it starts to decline in value? You liquidate and reposition. That's what you do. If you're not entirely convinced that it's going to fall through the fucking floor, you only sell a portion of it. And you reposition with that. Maybe in anticipation of that decline. Maybe you'll even fucking make some money. I don't even know what's wrong with these motherfuckers with regard to Verge. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you on that. I've lost a lot of money on Verge, but it's been mostly because of the decline in value of Bitcoin. When Bitcoin tanked in value, that sucked a lot of the value that I had out of Verge. Now, multiple times, I sold all my Verge, and I repositioned lower. I've told you people on this show multiple times, there's only 2 reasons why I sell Verge. Number 1, to take profit. And number 2, so I can buy more Verge. Motherfuckers. Anyway, continuing on. On December 21st, 2017, an XVG investor pressed McAfee on whether he bought the altcoin before he promoted it. And the antivirus guru falsely denied it. Prosecutors say, you know what? I can tell you right there. Again, I did not pay Mr. McAfee to come on my show. Mr. McAfee coming on my show did not have anything to do with any kind of business arrangement with Mr. McAfee, to my knowledge. Now, if Mr. McAfee had some sort of private thing going on in his shit, that's him. I had nothing to do with it. And I deny any knowledge of it. Because again, him being on my show, his association with Verge was because I'm fascinated by the guy and I had him on the motherfucking show. And all these prosecutors trying to claim that in itself represented some sort of business arrangement between myself and Mr. McAfee is fucking patently absurd. Continuing on. 4 days after McAfee allegedly promoted XVG in a tweet, and December 13th, 2017, the market price of the tokens spiked by more than 500%, according to the complaint. And to that complaint, again, I say fuck you. One of the reasons why I'm such a long-term investor in Verge is this. A long time ago, there was this exchange called Cryptsy, and I was trading actively on it. And Verge, I was getting because we were raining it in the IRC chan. And so, between that and like tips, I got some here, got some there, and it accumulated. And I put some on the exchange. And this is back when it was back when it was first put on the exchange, and it was trading at like 3 Satoshis. And I looked at the chart, and I thought, I'm like, you know what? It's been through one spike and a decline before. I think it's going to spike again, and according to the dimensions of the previous spike, I think that the next spike is going to be about 16 Satoshis. And so I put in a sell order for 16 Satoshis. Now, again, it was more or less free for me. I mean, except for the fact that I spent hours and hours and hours in that chan raining and tipping and getting rained on and tipped and raining and tipping and rained on and tipped and yeah. And so anyway, I come back a few months later And not only had my sell price hit, but it had gone back down. And I think it was back down to like 8 or something like that. And so, of course, I bought more. And I sat on it forever after that. But that's neither here nor there. The point being that in itself was a 400% jump. So, again, fuck you and your 500% spike. Like, that's something unusual for Verge. A lot, if you talk to the guys in the Telegram channel, some of them are actually convinced that we're going to break that all-time high in the not-so-distant future. I'm not saying that. This is not financial advice. I'm just saying that's a rumor. But if it were to do that, that again would be a 500% appreciation on top of what it currently is right now. So, yeah, again, actually it would be way higher than 500%. I wonder what they consider that. If you were to buy it at 66 Satoshis and sell it at 2,000 Satoshis, that's more than 500%. Anyway, continuing. McAfee and an unidentified alleged co-conspirator scalped at least 11 more altcoins between December 20th, 2017 and January 28th, 2018. Electronium, Burstcoin, Digibyte, Redcoin, Humanique, Tron, Factum, Dogecoin, Stellar Lumen. Stellar Lumen's actually starting to get some excitement again. XLM, Syscoin, and Ripio Credit Network tokens, prosecutors say. Watson, 40, was arrested on Thursday night in Texas and will be presented before a federal judge there on Friday. Both McAfee and Watson face a 7-count indictment alleging one count of conspiracy to commit commodities and securities fraud, 1 count of conspiracy to commit securities and touting fraud, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and 2 counts of substantive wire fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering, carrying a combined possible exposure of decades of imprisonment. Yeah, but he's most likely going to survive that, as opposed to if he were in a Spain prison, or Spanish prison rather. And that's it. Yeah, so apparently they're trying to reward McAfee for the coin tips that he gave them for free by punishing him for the fact that they held on to their bags too long. Well, I'm sorry, man. It was your fucking idiocy that cost you the money, not McAfee. I don't have any patience for that shit. Crypto is not a market for you to just fumble about in. I mean, I've done that. I also got wrecked doing that. So, it's really, if you want to get behind the wheel and you want to take responsibility over your monetary value in crypto, you've got to be aware that there are people out there that, unlike Mr. McAfee, actually do intend to steal your fucking money. At the least, in the cases that are mentioned on here, Mr. McAfee at least partially fulfilled. Meaning, if there is any legitimacy to these claims that he bought cryptocurrency from an exchange and then sold them aftermarket at a premium, probably. If there is any legitimacy to that, if the person's received the coins and the transaction was valid, no harm, no foul. It might as well have happened on Wall Street and been called an over-the-counter trade. So fuck you. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down with some music. Where'd it go? Well, I'm in a hyper kind of mood here. I'm not really happy about the way they're treating my man, Mr. McAfee. I mean, I like the guy. Say what you want about him, but he popularized a lot of shit in tech that y'all would have been fucking clueless about. Say what you want about what McAfee software is these days. Back in the 80s, and when he was actively out there pushing it, this was a blind spot that a lot of people weren't even thinking about. Anyway, let's get to it. And as far as where to go, I think maybe some Probot. But which song? Here we go. Red War by Probot, here on Coin Metal. And that was KMFDM with Money. And so, back to what we were talking about here. Got the antivirus thing out of the way here. Oh yeah. So we're bringing it down to the actual complaint. Let's find out from the aggrieved, assuming there is actually an aggrieved party in this case. And this is from the Southern District of New York, U.S. Attorney's Office. The U.S. Attorney's Office. John David McAfee, an executive advisor of his cryptocurrency team, indicted in Manhattan federal court for fraud and money laundering conspiracy crimes. And this was an immediate release, authored on March 5th, 2021. Audrey Strauss, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, and William F. Sweeney, Jr., the Assistant Director in charge of the New York Field Office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or I like to call them the Federal Bureau of Instigation, FBI, announced today the unsealing of an indictment charging John David McAfee, the founder of the McAfee Antivirus Software Company, and Jimmy Gale Watson Jr., who served as an executive advisor of McAfee, or McAfee's so-called cryptocurrency team, the McAfee team, with conspiracy to commit commodities and securities fraud, conspiracy to commit securities and touting fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy and substantive wire fraud, and money laundering conspiracy offenses stemming from two schemes relating to the fraudulent promotion to investors of cryptocurrencies qualifying under federal law as commodities or securities. Watson, who was arrested last night in Texas, will be presented later today before a federal magistrate judge in the Northern District of Texas. McAfee is currently detained in Spain on separate criminal charges filed by the United States Department of Justice Tax Division. Let me check something really quick. An alert here. Yep. And back to it. Let's see. Manhattan U.S. Attorney Audrey Strauss says, quote, as alleged, McAfee and Watson exploited a widely used social media platform and enthusiasm among investors in the emerging cryptocurrency market to make millions through lies and deception. The defendants allegedly used McAfee's Twitter account to publish messages to hundreds of thousands of his Twitter followers, touting various cryptocurrencies through false and misleading statements to conceal their true self-interested motives. McAfee, Watson, and other members of McAfee's cryptocurrency team allegedly raked in more than $13 million from investors they victimized with their fraudulent schemes. Investors should be wary of social media endorsements of investment opportunities. Yes, you should. You don't need them to tell them. Let's see here. I gotta answer somebody here because there we go. Let's see. FBI Assistant Director, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we got that one. According to the allegations in the charging documents unsealed today in Manhattan federal court, including the indictment against John David McAfee and Jimmy Gale Watson Jr., and an earlier filed criminal complaint against McAfee, during the period from or about December 2017 through in or about October 2018, John David McAfee and Jimmy Gale Watson Jr. and other members of the McAfee team perpetrated 2 fraudulent schemes relating to the promotion to investors of cryptocurrencies qualifying under federal law as commodities or securities. The first scheme involved a fraudulent practice called scalping, which is sometimes referred to as pump and dump scheme. I'm sorry, that's actually 2 separate schemes, but continuing. The scalping scheme generally consisted of the following. First, McAfee, Watson, and other McAfee team members bought large quantities of publicly traded cryptocurrency altcoins, which qualified as commodities or securities at inexpensive market prices, with advanced knowledge that McAfee planned to publicly endorse them via his widely followed Twitter account, the official McAfee Twitter account. Second, after these purchases, McAfee published false and misleading endorsement tweets via his official McAfee Twitter account, recommending those altcoins to members of the investing public for investment in order to artificially inflate or pump up their market prices without disclosing that McAfee owned large quantities of the promoted altcoins, even though McAfee had given false assurances that he would disclose such information in various tweets and public statements during the scalping scheme. Third, McAfee, Watson, and other McAfee team members then sold or dumped their respective investment positions in the promoted altcoins into the temporary but significant short-term market price increases that McAfee's deceptive tweets typically generated, often for significant profits. From in or about December 2017 through in or about January 2018, McAfee, Watson, and other McAfee team members collectively earned more than $2 million in illicit profits from their altcoin scalping activities, while the long-term value of the recommended altcoins purchased by investors declined substantially as of a year after the promotional tweets rather. From in or about December 2017 through in or about October 2018, McAfee, Watson, and other McAfee team members engaged in various efforts to liquidate the digital asset proceeds of their scalping activities into United States currency. Yeah, so what? They took some fucking profit. That's what you do when you invest and trade in currencies. In the second scheme, McAfee, Watson, and other McAfee team members also used McAfee's official McAfee Twitter account to publicly tout fundraising events called Initial Coin Offerings, ICOs, in which startup businesses, ICO issuers, issued and sold digital tokens qualifying as securities to the investing public without disclosing and, in fact, concealing that the ICO issuers were compensating McAfee and his team for his promotional tweets with a substantial portion of the funds raised from ICO investors. As the United States Securities and Exchange Commission had publicly warned, and as McAfee and Watson well knew, the federal securities laws required them to disclose any compensation paid by ICO issuers for touting securities offerings styled as ICOs. From approximately on or about December 20th, 2017, through on or about February 10th, 2018, McAfee, Watson, and other McAfee team members collectively earned more than $11 million in undisclosed compensation that they took steps to affirmatively hide from ICO investors. In each instance, McAfee and Watson failed to disclose to ICO investors that the ICO issuers were paying the McAfee team a substantial portion of the funds raised from ICO investors for their touting efforts, despite knowing that they were required to disclose such compensation under federal securities laws. Furthermore, in several instances during this ICO touting scheme, McAfee and Watson took active steps to conceal their secret compensation arrangements with ICO issuers from ICO investors, and McAfee made false and misleading statements and omissions to hide such deals from ICO investors. From approximately in or about December 2017 through in or about 2018, McAfee, Watson, and other McAfee team members engaged in various efforts to liquidate the digital asset proceeds of their ICO touting activities into United States dollars. During the period from in or about December 2017 through in or about October 2018, McAfee and Watson caused another McAfee team member to engage in banking transactions to launder proceeds of the fraudulent ICO touting scheme. In separate parallel enforcement actions, the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, and the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, have filed civil charges against McAfee and Watson. McAfee, 75, and Watson, 40, are United States citizens. Both of them are charged in a 7-count indictment, with 1 count of conspiracy to commit commodities and securities fraud, which carries a maximum potential sentence of 5 years in prison, 1 count of conspiracy to commit securities and touting fraud, which carries a maximum potential sentence of 5 years in prison, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and 2 counts of substantive wire fraud, each of which carries a maximum potential sentence of 20 years in prison, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering, which carries a maximum potential sentence of 10 years in prison. In addition to potential prison sentences, each of these charges also carries potential financial penalties. The maximum potential prison sentences in this case are prescribed by Congress and are provided here for informational purposes only, as any sentences to be imposed on the defendants will be determined by the judge. Ms. Strauss praised the work of the FBI on the investigation of this case and thanked the SEC and CFTC, both of which conducted separate parallel investigations, for their assistance. This case is being handled by the Office's Securities and Exchange Commission Fraud Task Force. Assistant United States Attorneys Samson Ensner and Elizabeth Haupt are in charge of the prosecution. The allegations contained in the charging documents in this case are merely accusations, and the defendants are presumed innocent unless proven guilty. They're not going to be able to prove shit. Again, Mr. McAfee was very, very smart in the way he uses his language. He's very, very smart in the way he uses language. Now, they may in fact be able to get something to stick. I doubt it, but they may. The fact of the matter is that in all of the cases where people have lost money on coins that Mr. McAfee had at one time in a year beforehand recommended, or at least mentioned, the people that lost that money, they suck at investing. They suck at trading. If you're trying to blame that shit on John McAfee, you're a fucking idiot. You don't deserve to be in this space. This space is for grown-ups, and if you need a mommy or daddy, you can stick to the Dow. You know, the SEC and the CFTC, they approve of all that fraudulent activity going on there. So, you know, you can just go over there and enjoy that shit. Look, if you've been here for any duration of time, you've seen waves and waves and waves of people that have come through. They've got their mimetic, they've got their semantic, they've got their vocabulary, they've got their buzzwords, they've got their white papers and their websites and their social media contacts. And you see it, and you have to ask yourself, how much of this can be simulated by just one person? And you start to understand really quick that there's a significant number of projects out there that are only run by a couple of people. You know, and you learn to reevaluate how exactly you value them. You know? And so, with regard to McAfee, you know, if you were concerned about people conducting these kinds of activities in crypto 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or 4 years before McAfee actually showed up, that was the time to be concerned about that shit. But you weren't back then, so just get the fuck off it. This idea that all ICOs are by default quote-unquote securities, just because the SEC barks and says they are, doesn't actually make them securities. And that one is going to get challenged, by the way. You know, somebody worth a few $1 billion is going to get confronted by the SEC over how much their project is worth, and they're going to have an allocation large enough to hire a legal team that will stomp the SEC into the ground, and then that'll be that. Then some new precedent will be set, and ICOs will not be assumed to be any kind of security just because the SEC says, that looks like a security. That's a security. We regulate that. No, you don't. I'm fucking sick of that shit. You know, it's like they act like they're literally royalty, and they can just go around and point at shit and say, that's a security. We regulate that. That's a commodity. The CFTC regulates that. No. You know, that assumes that you can get into every single Bitcoin transaction or every other cryptocurrency transaction and monitor and control. And you might be able to look at it, you might be able to monitor it, but you can't do anything to stop it. You can't do anything to get in there in the middle of it and say, you can't do that. No, we're not going to let you do that. Because you don't run those networks. They aren't yours. The currencies that are being created by them are not yours. The hardware that is supporting that network is not yours. Get the fuck over it. All of this shit, I predict it now, all of this shit will find the avenue of least resistance, and that is the means that it'll travel. And if it happens to be open and compliant with the law, it will be because the law has readjusted to accept, or at least be tolerable, within the tolerance limits of this market, and not that which is dictated by some regulatory entity somewhere. Because we've seen it multiple times in this space already, where regulators have come up to it and they've put their fucking gun in somebody's face, and the best they can do is make an example of people. The best they can do is issue fines and jail sentences. They can't stop the fucking code. You know, the SEC brought their action against Ripple. Did XRP stop trading? Only on a few exchanges. Those that have already been bitten by the urge to become acceptable by these regulating entities. And the fact of the matter is, these regulators they're just acting on behalf of the banks. They prohibit the average person from doing these things, while they fully support the traditional and legacy banks doing these things. And worse yet, they offer the ability for these entities to sign off on other people, to vouch for other people, and that's according to regulations. So say like Goldman Sachs, they're in New York, and Gemini's in New York, and Gemini's having a little bit of trouble getting their BIT license, but they happen to have a few friends over at Goldman Sachs, so they call them up and say, "Yo, bro, can you act as our regulatory proxy and help us get our fucking BIT license?" And Goldman Sachs is one of the head banks of the central bank system, so of course they say, "Yeah, we like money," and that's what they do. And they're fully licensed to do that. And like I said, because they're one of the top central banks out there in that central banking cabal, then when it comes down to something that's questionable according to the NYDFS, that it's maybe within their jurisdictional purview, they clamp down on that shit. I find it really annoying too, because like one of the exchanges I use, Bittrex, they were trying to get a BIT license. They were on probation for 3 years. That means that they had regulators or entities or personnel hired by the NYDFS to monitor their activities. And over that 3-year period, they had 2 questionable transactions. And this, according to the BIT license, the NYDFS, was enough to disqualify them from getting a BIT license. 3 fucking years. Bittrex had to hire or pay for the hire, probably even pay for the residence of personnel from the NYDFS to come there and basically live within their walls for 3 years and gathering all kinds of data on them and monitoring them and reporting on them for 3 years and 2 transactions. Now, mind you, the NYDFS, these are the same people that like, suspicious transaction reports, STRs. These are the same people that think, if there's a transaction and a bank thinks that, this transaction is facilitating child porn or sex slavery or, some weird shit like that, or drug dealing or massive quantities of drug shipments coming in, you got to pay for them somewhere. This transaction is that if a bank suspects that, and it's within their purview to monitor all transactions and all that, because it's on their systems. So, if they think that there's anything wrong with this transaction, all they have to do is file an STR report. Suspicious transaction report. We file the report, we're all good. They don't stop the transaction. They don't prevent the commerce from happening, the child porn, and the sex slavery, and the drug dealing, and the arms dealing, money laundering, none of that. No. They don't stop the transaction. They just file an STR. Everything's good. Regulatory entities are happy. They're not happy that they stopped crime. They're happy that they've got a record of it. We got a record of your criminal activity. We're not going to stop it. We're not going to do anything to get in your way. We're going to let it go through. Even though we know it's related to criminal activity, we don't really care. But we got a record of it. We know about it. And if it's sometime and later on, it should ever come that this suddenly becomes a taxable event, hey, we've got record of it. or if if we got to put somebody else in the pokey and they're not being cooperative, or we can't find the evidence on them, maybe we need you to push them to disclose the evidence. So we negotiate with you. We've got all this record of your financial activities, your illicit financial activities that you did not pay taxes on, or was wholly regulated activity that you performed in an unregulated market, whatever the reason may be. We get you to get this person to roll on themselves or provide you with the evidence, and everything is happy. That's how we play ball. I mean, I'm just postulating, like, what could be the purpose of all that documentation and all that, if this is the use of it. You know, that we let the banks get away with letting those transactions go through, even though it's within their purview to say, you know what, I think this transaction is facilitating sex trafficking and child slavery, and we're just going to say no. It's within their purview to do that. But they don't. They just file an STR report and collect their transaction fee and call it a good day. Anyway, let's go ahead and throw back down with some music. But where to go? I'm thinking a little Faith No More. Epic. Here on Coin Metal. And that was Death Clock with I Ejaculate Fire. And it is with that I'd like to close out this episode. Thank you very much for listening. I certainly do appreciate the support. We will be back again on Monday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And so until then, I want y'all to trade safe. Do your homework. And watch out for your own bunghole, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Not even John McAfee. And Godspeed, McAfee. As far as our last dance is concerned, we have not played any ministry tonight. I think it's time we resolve that. And as far as our last dance is concerned, I haven't actually picked one out, but I've got two in mind. And so it's just narrowing it down between one of those two. I think this is it right here. Especially because, we're launching into our weekend. It's that time. And so here it is. Ministry. Let's go. Last Dance. Here on Coin Metal. Thank you again for listening. And y'all have an excellent weekend. Good night.